This story is titled, At the Bachelor Party I Sponsored, my partner decided to have one final affair, so I left quietly, and what followed left everyone speechless. Hey Reddit, my name is Marcus, and I'm 29 years old. I never imagined I'd be the type of person to post my life drama anywhere on the internet. But here we are. I desperately need to get this situation off my chest, and maybe hearing from others who've been through similar experiences will help me process everything that's happened. Let me give you some background about who I am and where I was in life when everything fell apart. I work as a marketing manager for a tech startup here on the East Coast. I'm making decent money, not Silicon Valley rich by any means, but I'm comfortable as hell in our city. My background is pretty humble. I grew up in a working-class family and had to put myself through college by working nights at a warehouse. I busted my ass to get where I am today, and I've always prided myself on being the reliable, stable guy in my friend group. You know the type, the one friends come to for advice rather than drama. I was supposed to marry Victoria last month. She's 26, and we had been together for 4 years, engaged for the past year. Victoria worked as a marketing coordinator at a fashion company, making decent money, but constantly talking about how she deserved more recognition and a higher salary. On paper, everything between us seemed absolutely perfect. We had purchased a 4-bedroom house in a nice suburb that cost us a fortune, though I put down most of the down payment. We both drove matching Audis, mine was paid off, while hers was on a lease that I had co-signed for. Our families got along great, and I seriously thought I knew exactly who she was as a person. What I didn't fully realize at the time was just how obsessed Victoria had become with appearances and social status. She would constantly compare our lifestyle to her friends who had married wealthier men. She was always pushing for bigger, more expensive vacations, talking about wanting more expensive jewelry, and frequently mentioning how we should upgrade to a $1 million house once we were officially married. Looking back, these should have been red flags. But I overlooked all of it because I genuinely loved her and thought she loved me in return. About 3 weeks before our expensive wedding, which my parents had contributed a significant amount of money toward, Victoria went on her bachelorette trip to Miami with 6 of her closest friends. I had paid for her first-class ticket as a pre-wedding gift, even though money was getting pretty tight with all the wedding expenses piling up. I didn't think anything of it at the time. It seemed like normal bachelorette party stuff. She kept texting me throughout the entire trip, saying how much she missed me and sending pictures from the clubs and activities they were doing. I had absolutely zero worries or concerns about what might happen during her trip. My world literally exploded 4 days after she returned from Miami. Her cousin Christina, who was 23 and had been on the bachelorette trip, showed up at my office during my lunch break. She looked absolutely terrible, like she hadn't slept properly in days. The moment I saw her face, I knew something was seriously wrong. "Marcus, I need to talk to you about what happened in Miami," she said, and I immediately felt this terrible, sinking feeling deep in my gut. You know that feeling when you can sense that your entire world is about to change, but you're not quite ready to hear it yet. Christina proceeded to tell me that on the second night of the trip, Victoria had met some guy named Dylan at a high-end club. They were in the VIP section that night, which, by the way, I had also paid for as part of the bachelorette package. According to Christina, Victoria got increasingly drunk on expensive bottles of champagne and started talking openly about how this Dylan guy was clearly loaded. She noticed he was wearing an expensive Rolex and was dropping thousands of dollars at the club without even thinking about it. She mentioned to her friends that he had told her he owned an investment firm. Then Victoria made an announcement to all of her friends that absolutely destroyed me when I heard it. She told them that since this was her last chance at freedom before settling down, she deserved one final fling before committing to boring, safe Marcus. She was going to hook up with this Dylan guy, and she didn't care what anyone thought about it. Her friends apparently tried talking her out of it, telling her it was a terrible idea and that she was making a huge mistake. But Victoria told them all to fuck off and said, "You're just jealous that I have options. Some of us can actually do better than a marketing manager." The absolute worst part of this entire revelation was when Christina showed me the texts from their group chat. The morning after Victoria's night with Dylan, she had been bragging in explicit detail about how it was supposedly the best sex of her life. She described things she had done with him that she had always refused to do with me throughout our 4-year relationship. Victoria wrote about how she was getting the good stuff out of her system before settling for what she called a reliable provider. She even joked in the group chat that maybe she should accidentally run into Dylan again sometime after the wedding, essentially planning future infidelity before we were even married. I was absolutely fucking devastated. But I didn't confront Victoria immediately. Not yet. I had a different plan forming in my mind, and I knew I needed to be strategic about how I handled this betrayal. I'm a methodical person by nature. It's what makes me good at my job. And I wasn't going to let my emotions drive me to make any rash decisions that I might regret later. After finding out about Victoria's betrayal in Miami, I didn't yell, scream, or do anything stupid that might tip her off to what I knew. Instead, I made a carefully calculated plan like the methodical manager I am. I knew that if I was going to end this relationship, I was going to do it on my terms and protect myself financially in the process. First, I took a personal day off from work and went through our finances with a fine-tooth comb. What I discovered made the betrayal even worse. Victoria had been racking up secret credit card debt, almost $30,000 worth of designer clothes, expensive spa treatments, and luxury purchases that she had been systematically hiding from me. All this time, she had been telling me that she was diligently saving money for our honeymoon, but that was clearly complete bullshit. She had been living a double financial life while I was planning our future together. Next, I made the decision to withdraw my portion of our joint savings account, about $85,000 that was supposed to be the foundation for our married life together. We had always kept separate accounts for most of our day-to-day expenses, but we shared a wedding fund and a house emergency fund. I want to be clear here. I left her portion of the money completely untouched. I'm not a thief, unlike some people in this story. I only took what was rightfully mine, what I had contributed through my own hard work and careful saving. Then came the execution of my plan. I moved out of our house while Victoria was at her weekly manicure and pedicure appointment, something she never missed and always took at least 2 hours to complete. I only took what was clearly and obviously mine: my clothes, my personal items, my electronics, and things I had owned before we moved in together. I left behind everything we had purchased together, including furniture and household items. The one thing I made sure to leave behind was her 3.5-carat engagement ring that had cost me $22,000. I placed it carefully on the kitchen counter with a simple note that read, "Ask Dylan if he wants to buy you one instead." I thought that message perfectly captured both my knowledge of her betrayal and my complete dismissal of any future together. After that, I changed my phone number entirely and deleted all of my social media accounts. I took 2 weeks of emergency leave from work, telling my boss that a family emergency had come up. He was completely understanding about it and didn't ask too many questions. The only person who knew where I was staying during this time was my brother Derek. I didn't say anything to anyone else, not our mutual friends, not family members, nobody. I essentially just vanished from Victoria's life without any warning or explanation. Derek later told me that Victoria went absolutely crazy trying to find me after she discovered I was gone. She showed up at his place multiple times, crying and screaming at his door. The first time she came over, she was all tears and playing the confused victim, saying things like, "I don't know what happened to Marcus," and "he just disappeared" without any explanation. But by the third visit, her true colors started showing. She was banging on Derek's door at 2 a.m., screaming that I was a fucking coward and demanding that he tell her where I was hiding. Victoria even went so far as to call the police and file a missing person report, thinking that might force me to come forward or help her track me down. However, when the police discovered that I had clearly taken my personal belongings and left a note behind, they told her bluntly that this was obviously a relationship issue, not a legitimate police matter. They weren't going to waste their time on what was clearly a domestic dispute rather than an actual missing person case. She contacted all of our mutual friends and reached out to my family members, playing the victim card and telling everyone that I must have had some kind of mental breakdown. She painted herself as the innocent, confused fiancé whose partner had suddenly snapped and abandoned her without any warning or explanation. The funniest part of this whole circus was that she kept trying to access our joint bank accounts, only to discover that I had already withdrawn my half of the money. According to Derek, she went absolutely ballistic when she realized she was going to have to pay for all the wedding vendors herself with her own money. Eventually, I had my lawyer, Connor, he's a college buddy who now specializes in divorce cases, send her an official letter. The letter stated clearly that our engagement was terminated due to her infidelity, and that all future communication should go through him rather than her trying to contact me directly. I also took the initiative to inform all of our wedding vendors about the cancellation myself. I told them to keep the deposits that I had already paid, which amounted to about $15,000 going straight down the drain. But honestly, it was worth every single penny to be completely rid of her and avoid any further entanglement. 3 weeks passed, and I rented a new apartment downtown for $2,800 a month. It was way more expensive than I really needed, but I wanted to treat myself to something nice after everything I'd been through. I bought some basic furniture and started the process of trying to rebuild my life from scratch. But then Derek told me something that got me thinking about whether I had handled the situation correctly. Apparently, Victoria's life was completely falling apart in ways I hadn't even anticipated. She had lost her job because she had a complete breakdown at work, screaming at her boss that she deserved a personal day after her fiancé had abandoned her. Her unprofessional outburst in front of colleagues and potentially clients had made her position untenable, and they had to let her go. Her friends had abandoned her after Christina exposed the Miami texts to everyone in their friend group. But it turns out the situation was even worse than I initially thought. Apparently, Victoria had been talking shit about all of her friends behind their backs too, and those conversations were also revealed in the group chat screenshots. The betrayal wasn't limited to just me. She had been two-faced with everyone in her social circle. Her parents were absolutely disgusted with her behavior. They're old-school religious folks who had raised her with strong moral values, and they were horrified to learn what their daughter had done. The disappointment and shame they felt was apparently overwhelming, and they had made their feelings about her actions very clear. Meanwhile, rumors were spreading through our entire friend circle about her wild night in Miami. These rumors were apparently much worse and more exaggerated than what had actually happened, but Victoria had created this situation herself through her own actions and bragging. The stories were taking on a life of their own, and her reputation was being destroyed in real time. Part of me felt like she absolutely deserved everything that was happening to her for betraying me in such a calculated, cruel way. But another part of me couldn't help but wonder if my complete ghosting and disappearing act had been too harsh. Should I have given her a chance to explain herself, even though I knew her explanations would likely be lies and manipulation? Would it have made any difference in the outcome if I had confronted her directly instead of just vanishing? Deep down, I don't think I'll ever speak to Victoria again. The trust has been completely shattered, and there's no coming back from what she did and how she talked about me behind my back. But sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in my new apartment, I question whether I handled this situation the right way. Was I justified in my approach, or did I take things too far by completely cutting her off without any opportunity for dialogue? Update. Holy shit, this blew up. Thanks for all the incredible support, everyone. I never thought my completely fucked up life would get so much attention from strangers on the internet. It's been about 3 days since my last post, and my inbox has turned into an absolute war zone. I'm trying to read through all of your comments, but there are literally thousands of them to get through. Almost all of you are saying that I did the right thing by handling the situation the way I did, which honestly helps me feel less like I'm losing my mind over everything that happened. A lot of people have been asking what happened after Connor, my lawyer, sent Victoria that official letter, so I'll fill in some of the gaps that I left out of my original story. Her first response to the lawyer's letter was to send me approximately 50 emails over the course of several days. These messages ranged from tearful, desperate apologies to completely batshit crazy accusations that I was overreacting and throwing away our entire future over what she called one stupid mistake. She claimed that what happened in Miami was just physical and didn't mean anything emotional to her. You know, the classic cheater's bullshit excuse that every unfaithful person uses when they get caught. After Connor contacted her again with a formal warning to stop the harassment, she tried a different approach. She sent a handwritten letter to my parents' house, thinking that I might be staying there and would see it. This wasn't just a short note. It was 16 fucking pages of excuses, justifications, and blame shifting. She wrote extensively about how she was drunk, how she was pressured by her friends, how she was having cold feet about the wedding, and a bunch of other complete BS explanations for her behavior. But here's the part that really pissed me off. She actually had the audacity to write in this letter that if I had been more adventurous in bed throughout our relationship, she wouldn't have needed to explore elsewhere to get her needs met. She was literally trying to blame me for her decision to cheat, as if my sexual performance had somehow forced her to fuck a stranger in Miami. The thing that made her letter even more infuriating was that the text Christina had shown me told a completely different story than what Victoria was now claiming. In those group chat messages, Victoria wasn't pressured by anyone. She was the one who made the decision to hook up with Dylan and was actively encouraging it. She wasn't blackout drunk and unable to make rational decisions. She remembered every single detail clearly enough to brag about it the next morning. And she certainly wasn't remorseful about what had happened. She was fucking bragging about it and making jokes about potentially doing it again after we got married. Some of you asked what exactly happened at her job, so I'll give you those details. According to our mutual friend Kevin, Victoria had a complete meltdown during a meeting with important clients. She started crying and screaming about how she had ruined everything and how men are all the same. Her boss, who is a woman by the way, immediately put Victoria on leave after this unprofessional outburst in front of paying clients. Victoria quit a few days later, rather than face the humiliation of going back to work and dealing with the aftermath of her breakdown. Now she's telling everyone who will listen that she left that job because they didn't appreciate her talents and were underpaying her for the value she brought to the company. It's typical Victoria behavior, rewriting history to make herself look like the victim rather than taking responsibility for her actions. As for her friends, it turns out they were actually more loyal to me than I had ever realized. After Christina exposed those damning texts from Miami, several of Victoria's friends reached out to me directly to express their complete disgust with her behavior and offer their support during this difficult time. Even her maid of honor, Lisa, who has been Victoria's best friend since high school, has completely cut ties with her. Lisa told me that Victoria had been talking behind her back for years, constantly criticizing her weight, making snide comments about her boyfriend, and mocking her career choices as basic and unambitious. Apparently, I wasn't the only person Victoria was being two-faced with. She had been systematically betraying the trust of everyone in her life, not just me. Regarding the rumors that have been spreading about what happened in Miami, I want to be clear that I haven't contributed to any of them or spread any stories myself. But apparently, the narrative has evolved and gotten completely out of hand. It started as the truth, that she had a one-night stand with a stranger at a club. But now the rumors have morphed into claims that she had a threesome with strangers, or that she slept with multiple guys throughout the trip and even filmed some of it. I'm not correcting these exaggerated rumors because honestly, I don't want to talk about the details with anyone in our social circle. And frankly, fuck her reputation at this point. She created this situation through her own actions and her own bragging, so she can deal with the consequences of how the story has gotten twisted and amplified. The hardest part of this entire situation has been dealing with our families and their reactions. Victoria's parents actually called my parents to apologize for their daughter's behavior. They said they had raised her better than this and were genuinely ashamed of what she had done. My parents are absolutely heartbroken about the situation because they really loved Victoria and had already started thinking of her as the daughter they never had. My mom keeps asking if there's any chance of reconciliation between us, and I've told her repeatedly and firmly that there isn't. I've been seeing a therapist, Dr. Wilson, twice a week to help me process everything that's happened. It costs me $175 per session, but it's worth every single penny. The therapy is definitely helping me work through the trauma and betrayal, but I still wake up in the middle of the night with this hollow, aching feeling in my chest. 4 years of my life feel like a complete fucking lie now, and that's a difficult reality to come to terms with. When I look at old pictures of Victoria and me together, I find myself wondering if she was already planning her last hurrah, even while we were picking out wedding cakes and making plans for our future together. The thought that she might have been plotting her infidelity while we were in the middle of wedding planning makes everything feel even more calculated and cruel. The worst discovery came when I found a notebook of Victoria's that had gotten mixed in with my belongings when I moved out of our house. In this notebook, she had written out a detailed list of pros and cons about marrying me. The pros were all focused on financial security, my family connections, my uncle is a partner at a big law firm that she had wanted to network with, and the fact that I was consistent and reliable as a partner. The cons included things like not ambitious enough and doesn't surprise me anymore, which stung but weren't completely shocking. But the real kicker, the line that made me feel sick to my stomach, was, could probably do better, but running out of time to find someone else. That's who I almost married. A manipulative, status-obsessed, cheating gold digger who saw me as nothing more than a safe backup plan while she got what she called the good stuff out of her system with other men. Thanks for letting me vent about all of this. Writing this shit out and getting responses from people who understand what I'm going through actually helps me process everything. The support from strangers on the internet has been more meaningful than I expected it to be. Update. Things have gotten even more complicated. 2 weeks have passed since my last update, and holy fuck, things have gotten even more wild and complicated than I thought possible. Buckle up for this next part, because the story takes some serious turns that I never saw coming. I finally agreed to meet with Victoria face-to-face after she kept sending messages through every possible channel she could think of. She even had her mom call my mom, crying and begging for just one conversation between us. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, with the clear understanding that I would leave immediately if she started any kind of drama or manipulation. I barely recognized the woman who walked into that coffee shop. Victoria had lost a significant amount of weight, had dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide, and her usually perfect hair and flawless makeup were a complete mess. She was wearing sweatpants, and I had literally never seen her leave the house in anything less than a full face of makeup and a carefully coordinated, stylish outfit before this moment. Part of me felt a twisted satisfaction seeing her reduced to this state, which I'm not particularly proud of admitting. Victoria started the conversation by apologizing profusely, crying about how she had made the biggest mistake of her entire life, and that she never truly appreciated what she had until she lost it. It was the standard cheater's remorse script that I'm sure most of you have heard before, nothing original or particularly convincing. Then she dropped an absolute bombshell that I wasn't prepared for at all. She claimed that she was pregnant. My first reaction was complete disbelief, because we had always used protection throughout our relationship. When I questioned her about this, she said that the protection must have failed at some point. But then she admitted something that made me feel like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. She wasn't 100% sure who the father was. It could be me, or it could be Dylan from Miami. She said she was pretty sure. It was mine because of the timing, but the uncertainty was right there in her admission. I told her immediately and firmly that I would only acknowledge paternity after a DNA test was conducted following the birth. She got angry at my response and accused me of being cold and unfeeling toward her during what should be a happy time. She said that a real man would stand by his woman no matter what the circumstances were. I reminded her bluntly that she was the one who had cheated on me and that I had every right to verify paternity given her infidelity. She actually had the nerve to say, "This is supposed to be a happy time for us, and you're ruining it with your trust issues." The audacity of that statement was absolutely mind-blowing. She was trying to make me feel guilty for not trusting her after she had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. The conversation deteriorated rapidly from there. She started blaming me for overreacting to her mistake and accused me of destroying her entire life by disappearing the way I did. She said that if I had just talked to her instead of vanishing, we could have worked things out and moved past this together. Then she started crying about how she couldn't afford the mortgage payments on our house without my income contributing to the household expenses. It became clear that she had been putting most of her money into her secret shopping addiction rather than saving for our future. And now her parents weren't helping her financially because they were disgusted with her behavior and were taking my side in the situation. I asked her point blank if she would have even told me about what happened in Miami if Christina hadn't come forward with the truth. She couldn't answer that question. She just stared down at her latte in silence, which told me everything I needed to know. Before I left the coffee shop, she tried one more desperate manipulation tactic. She put her hand on mine and said in what she probably thought was a seductive voice that she missed me and knew exactly how to make everything up to me. When I immediately pulled my hand away from hers, her entire demeanor changed completely. She hissed at me that I was throwing away a family and that I would regret this decision for the rest of my pathetic life. In that moment, the mask completely slipped, and I saw the real Victoria cold, manipulative, and genuinely cruel when she didn't get what she wanted. I left the coffee shop feeling even more certain than before that I had made the right choice in ending our relationship. If she's actually pregnant, I'll deal with that situation when the time comes, but I'm not getting back together with her regardless of the circumstances. After our meeting, Victoria apparently told people that I had been cruel to her during what should have been a supportive conversation about her pregnancy. Her sister Nicole called me, saying that I should man up and support Victoria during the pregnancy, regardless of my feelings about what had happened between us. I explained the entire situation to Nicole, including the paternity issue and the uncertainty about who the father actually was. Once she understood the full story that Victoria had conveniently left out, Nicole backed off completely and admitted that she didn't know all the details of what had really happened. Here's where the story gets even more fucked up than I thought possible. I found out through Kevin, our mutual friend, that the Miami guy, Dylan, wasn't actually some random stranger that Victoria had met at the club like she had told her friends. He was actually someone from her workplace that she had been flirting with for months before the bachelorette party even happened. Dylan had specifically flown to Miami knowing that Victoria would be there for her bachelorette trip. This revelation makes the betrayal so much worse in my mind because it wasn't some impulsive, alcohol-fueled mistake like she had been claiming. There was actual planning and intent behind what happened in Miami. She had been building up to this affair for months, flirting with this guy at work while planning our wedding and acting like the loving, committed fiancé at home. Kevin also told me that Dylan is actually married with kids, which means Victoria knowingly hooked up with a married man while she was engaged to me. The levels of betrayal and moral corruption just keep getting deeper the more I learn about what really happened. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was helping another person cheat on their spouse and destroy their family. On a more positive note, I've started reconnecting with old friends that I had neglected during my relationship with Victoria. My college buddy Brian and I have been going mountain biking on weekends, which is something that Victoria always complained was too dangerous and a waste of money. It feels incredible to rediscover activities and friendships that I had given up to keep her happy. I'm throwing myself into work and focusing on rebuilding my life from the ground up. I've made the decision to sell my half of our house to Victoria if she can somehow afford to buy me out, or force a sale if she can't come up with the money. I don't want anything connecting us anymore. No shared assets, no financial entanglements, nothing that would require us to communicate in the future. The wedding that never happened would have been this weekend. Instead of watching Victoria walk down the aisle in her $12,000 dress that my mom had helped pay for, I booked a hiking trip with my brother Derek to get away from all the memories and associations with what should have been our wedding day. I'm taking this whole situation one step at a time, focusing on moving forward rather than dwelling on what might have been. Update: the pregnancy was fake, fucking unbelievable. 1 month has passed since my last post, and you're absolutely not going to believe this latest development. The pregnancy was completely fake. I can't even begin to express how unbelievable this situation has become. First off, thanks for all the awards and DMs of support. I never expected this many people would care about my complete train wreck of a life, but the response has been overwhelming and genuinely helpful during this difficult time. So here's what happened with the fake pregnancy situation. I found out that the pregnancy was complete bullshit when Victoria's former roommate Maya contacted me out of the blue. Maya and Victoria had a falling out years ago, which should have been a red flag about Victoria's character, but they still had several mutual friends in common. Maya overheard Victoria on the phone with one of these mutual friends, and what she heard made her feel like she had to reach out to me. According to Maya, Victoria was literally bragging about how she had made up the entire pregnancy story to try to manipulate me into getting back together with her and secure her financial future. Maya heard Victoria say, word for word, "Marcus is such a sucker for responsibility and doing the right thing. I just need to keep the pregnancy story going long enough to get him to reconcile with me. Then I can fake a miscarriage in a few months, and everything will go back to normal." Maya felt that I deserved to know the truth about what Victoria was planning. She told me that she and Victoria had never been particularly close, but she had always thought that Victoria treated me more like an ATM than an actual partner throughout our relationship. Maya said she couldn't stand by and watch Victoria manipulate me with something as serious as a fake pregnancy. When I confronted Victoria with this information, she completely broke down and confessed to everything. She said that she thought a baby would somehow fix things between us and force us back together. She was desperate because she couldn't afford the lifestyle she had grown accustomed to without my income, supporting her spending habits and covering major expenses. I have never been so disgusted with another human being in my entire life. Who the fuck lies about something as serious as pregnancy? What kind of person uses the possibility of a child as a manipulation tactic to get their ex-boyfriend back? I recorded our entire conversation. We live in a one-party consent state, and I told her clearly that if she ever contacted me again with more lies or manipulation attempts, I would send that recording to everyone we know, including her boss at her new job. She hasn't reached out to me since I made that threat, which tells me she finally understands that I'm completely done with her bullshit. With this final betrayal, any lingering doubts I might have had about ending our relationship have completely vanished. She has shown her true character repeatedly throughout this entire ordeal, and it's ugly as hell. There's no coming back from the level of manipulation and deception she's capable of. The house situation has been resolved, and surprise, surprise, Victoria couldn't afford to buy me out of my share. We ended up selling the house, and fortunately the market is really good right now. I walked away with about $175,000 in equity from the sale. All communication throughout the entire selling process happened through our respective realtors and lawyers. I made sure we never had to speak directly about any of the details. Dr. Wilson, my therapist, says that I'm making significant progress in processing the trauma and betrayal I've experienced. The anger is still there beneath the surface, but it's no longer consuming my thoughts and emotions the way it was in the beginning. I've started going to the gym regularly and have picked up boxing as a new hobby. Hitting things helps me work through my frustrations a lot, and I'll admit that I sometimes pretend the heavy bag has Dylan's face on it when I'm throwing punches. Work has become a genuine refuge for me during this difficult time. I've thrown myself into new projects and have been putting in extra hours to stay busy and productive. I've even been mentioned for a senior manager position that would come with a significant salary bump if I get it. It's nice to have something positive and forward-looking to focus my energy on instead of dwelling on the past. Dating isn't on my radar yet, even though several well-meaning friends have tried to set me up with people they know. I'm just not ready for that kind of emotional vulnerability again. Trust is going to be a major issue for me going forward in any future relationship. I know intellectually that not everyone is like Victoria, but the fear and wariness are still very much present. I need more time to heal before I can even think about opening myself up to someone new. I did have an awkward encounter last week when I ran into Victoria's parents at a restaurant downtown. That was uncomfortable as hell for all of us. They approached me and apologized again for their daughter's behavior, saying they were deeply ashamed of what she had done. I told them that they weren't responsible for Victoria's actions and that I had genuinely appreciated their kindness throughout our relationship. Her mom started crying when we talked, and I felt bad for them. They're decent people who are probably struggling to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with her actual behavior and moral character. Some interesting karma has come into play in this situation, though. It turns out that Dylan's wife found out about the Miami affair and the subsequent contact between him and Victoria through social media posts and messages. She has filed for divorce from Dylan as a result. According to Kevin, our mutual friend, Dylan has been desperately trying to save his marriage by claiming that Victoria trapped him and came on too strong, essentially throwing her completely under the bus to try to save his own relationship. So now both of the cheaters are alone and miserable, dealing with the consequences of their actions. Dylan's marriage is over, and Victoria is struggling financially and socially after burning bridges with everyone in her life. I've been asked by several people if I regret how I handled this entire situation, specifically, disappearing without a word instead of confronting Victoria directly. Honestly, I have no regrets about my approach. It was pure self-preservation on my part. If I had confronted her directly when I first found out about the cheating, she would have manipulated the situation, made excuses, cried those crocodile tears that she's so good at, and possibly convinced me to give her another chance that she didn't deserve. I needed a clean break from Victoria to see the situation clearly without her manipulation clouding my judgment. Sometimes people say that the trash takes itself out, but in this case, I had to be the one to actively throw it away. I have absolutely no regrets about how I handled things. Major update. Several significant developments have happened. I didn't plan on posting another update, but several significant things have happened since my last post, and writing it all out continues to help me process everything. Plus, so many of you have been messaging me asking for updates on how things have progressed. First, the house sold for $720,000, which was well above the asking price. The real estate market is absolutely crazy right now, and we benefited from that. After all the fees and paying off my portion of the mortgage, I walked away with about $190,000 in profit from the sale. I've used that money as a down payment on a smaller place that's closer to downtown, near the tech district where I work. It's a 2-bedroom loft that cost $450,000 and needs some renovation work, but it's entirely mine. There are no memories of Victoria anywhere in this space, which feels psychologically important for my healing process. I've also invested about $50,000 in some promising tech stocks and cryptocurrency as a way to diversify and grow my money. Second, I found out that Victoria has been having a really rough time adjusting to life without my financial support. She managed to get a job at a smaller marketing firm, but she's making significantly less money than before, around $45,000 annually. She's had to drastically downsize her lifestyle and moved into a tiny apartment that's a far cry from our 4-bedroom house. She also had to sell her Audi because she couldn't afford the lease payments without me co-signing and providing financial backup. According to our mutual friends, Victoria has been bad-mouthing me to anyone who will listen, claiming that I financially abused her by cutting her off from money that she somehow thinks she was entitled to. However, the truth about her character finally came out when Lisa, her former maid of honor, got fed up with all the lies Victoria was spreading. Lisa posted screenshots in our friend group chat showing evidence of Victoria's secret credit card debt, her shopping addiction, and text messages where Victoria literally referred to me as her meal ticket while she was planning to cheat on me. Lisa also revealed that Victoria had been actively shopping around for a richer guy for months before the Miami incident, even going on lunch dates with her boss's wealthy friends while we were engaged and planning our wedding. The level of betrayal just keeps getting deeper every time I learn something new about what Victoria was really doing behind my back. It wasn't just the one night in Miami. She had been systematically looking for someone to replace me with more money for months before she even went on that bachelorette trip. Speaking of Lisa, we've actually gotten closer over the past few months. Not romantically or anything like that, but she's been a genuinely good friend to me throughout this entire ordeal. She told me that she regrets not warning me about Victoria's true character sooner, but she hadn't felt it was her place to interfere in our relationship at the time. The most unexpected development came last week when Christina, the cousin who originally told me about Victoria's cheating in Miami, reached out to me. We met for drinks to catch up, and one thing led to another between us. We're not officially dating or anything serious like that. Neither of us is emotionally ready for that kind of commitment yet. But there's definitely something developing between us. It's complicated and probably a bad idea given the circumstances, but for the first time in months, I felt something other than anger, numbness, or betrayal. We're taking things extremely slowly and being completely honest with each other about our reservations and concerns about getting involved. Victoria somehow found out about my connection with Christina and completely lost her shit over it. She sent a mutual friend to deliver a message to me, claiming that I was proving her right about supposedly wanting to hook up with her cousin all along. Apparently, that had been one of Victoria's excuses for cheating. She had been telling people that I had been checking out Christina and that she felt justified in her infidelity because I was supposedly interested in other women. It's complete bullshit, of course. I had never thought of Christina in a romantic way until very recently, after everything that happened with Victoria. But Victoria was trying to rewrite history to make herself look like the victim yet again. Then Victoria tried one last desperate move that showed just how unhinged she had become. She showed up uninvited at my brother Derek's wedding reception last weekend. Derek and his fiancée Emma had invited Victoria months ago, before everything happened, and they had forgotten to uninvite her from the guest list. Victoria showed up wearing a white dress. Who the fuck wears white to someone else's wedding? And made a complete scene. She started crying and begging me to talk to her in front of all the wedding guests. When I refused to engage with her drama, she screamed that I had ruined her entire life and that I owed her for everything she had sacrificed during our relationship. It was absolutely mortifying for Derek and Emma on what should have been their special day. Derek's new wife Emma was furious about the disruption, and they had to call security to escort Victoria out of the reception. Derek and Emma were understandably pissed about the whole situation, but I managed to smooth things over and apologize for Victoria's behavior. The rest of the evening was actually great once she was gone, though there was definitely an undercurrent of awkwardness that lingered throughout the celebration. Work continues to be my sanctuary and source of stability during all this chaos. I got that promotion I mentioned in my previous update, and I'm now managing a team of 5 people. The increased responsibilities keep my mind occupied and focused on productive things, which has been incredibly helpful for my mental health. Plus, the salary bump to $165,000 per year, plus stock options, is pretty sweet and gives me more financial security and independence. I've had dinner with Victoria's parents twice since everything happened, and they're genuinely struggling with their daughter's choices and the person she's revealed herself to be. They're dealing with the distance that Victoria has put between them and trying to understand how the daughter they raised turned into someone capable of such deception and manipulation. Apparently, Victoria has been asking them for money constantly since her financial situation deteriorated. When her parents suggested that she should get financial counseling instead of just asking for handouts, she accused them of abandoning her when she needs them most. It's typical Victoria behavior, making herself the victim when people won't enable her poor choices. Victoria's parents asked if I minded staying in touch with them despite everything that happened, and I told them I didn't mind at all. They were going to be my in-laws, and I genuinely care about them as people. They're good, decent folks who don't deserve to be caught in the middle of their daughter's mess. Dr. Wilson, my therapist, says that my recovery is progressing well, but he's cautioned me about potential trust issues that might affect future relationships. I'm actively working on not letting Victoria's betrayal color my view of everyone else, but it's definitely something I have to be conscious about. The nightmares have mostly stopped, which is a huge improvement. I no longer wake up in a cold sweat replaying scenarios in my head or wondering what I could have done differently. The pain has evolved from a sharp, stabbing sensation to more of a persistent, dull ache. It's still there, but it's manageable now. I guess that's progress in the healing process. I've reconnected with friends that I had distanced myself from during my relationship with Victoria, and it's been eye-opening to hear their perspectives on what they observed. Several of them admitted that they had concerns about Victoria's behavior and attitude, but they didn't feel it was their place to say anything at the time. In hindsight, there were definitely red flags that I ignored or rationalized away. For example, Victoria used to joke frequently about trading up for a richer guy, but I always dismissed it as harmless teasing. She would also get genuinely angry when I wanted to spend money on experiences like trips or activities instead of buying status symbols that other people would see and admire. These should have been warning signs about her values and priorities, but I was too invested in the relationship to see them clearly. So that's where things stand right now. Life goes on, and it's not the life I had planned or expected to be living at this point. But maybe it will turn out to be a better life in the long run. Who knows what the future holds? Final update. It's been a year since my world imploded. It's been a full year since my world completely imploded, and I think this will be my final update on this entire situation. Honestly, the story has taken some unexpected turns over the past few months, and I want to share how karma, combined with a little strategic planning on my part, finally gave me the closure I needed. First off, my relationship with Christina didn't work out romantically. After a few months of trying to make things work between us, we both realized that the foundation of our connection was too deeply rooted in the trauma and betrayal we had both experienced with Victoria. It wasn't healthy for either of us to build a romantic relationship on that kind of foundation. We've remained friends, though, which I genuinely value. She's actually dating a decent guy now, and I'm happy for her that she's found someone who treats her well. The big news is that I've been promoted again at work. I'm now director of engineering, making $210,000 annually plus considerable stock options. The startup I work for secured a massive round of funding recently, and my equity stake is now worth close to $1.5 million on paper. Not bad for a marketing manager who supposedly wasn't ambitious enough, according to Victoria's assessment of my career prospects. Speaking of Victoria, this is where the story gets really interesting. About 6 months ago, she reached out through a mutual friend, begging for the opportunity to talk to me. I agreed to meet her in a public place, fully expecting more drama and manipulation attempts. She looked absolutely terrible when I saw her. The year had not been kind to her at all. She had gained a significant amount of weight. Her hair was dull and lifeless, and she had that desperate, hungry look in her eyes that I recognized from salespeople who were about to miss their quota and lose their jobs. Victoria started the meeting with what seemed like a rehearsed apology, saying she had been in therapy and had finally realized the magnitude of her mistakes. But then she got to the real reason for wanting to meet. She was in serious financial trouble. After losing her job and burning through what little savings she had racked up nearly $80,000 in credit card debt, trying to maintain the lifestyle she thought she deserved. She was facing bankruptcy and possible eviction from her apartment. Then came the absolute kicker of this entire conversation. She wanted my help. Not just emotional support, but she wanted me to invest in her new business idea. She had some ridiculous plan for a luxury social media consulting firm that would target wealthy clients, and she needed $50,000 to get it started. She actually had the nerve to say that I owed it to her after abandoning her the way I did. She claimed that my disappearance had caused all of her current problems, and that I had a moral obligation to help her get back on her feet. I laughed directly in her face. I told her that I wouldn't give her a single penny if she was literally dying in the street in front of me. Her carefully constructed mask slipped immediately, and she started crying and begging, saying that she had nowhere else to turn for help. Her parents had cut her off financially after discovering that she had been stealing jewelry from her mom's jewelry box to sell for cash. Dylan had blocked her on all platforms after she tried to extort money from him by threatening to tell his wife additional details about their affair that she had been holding back. I had a moment of deep satisfaction seeing her reduced to this desperate state. But then, I had an even better idea. I told her I would think about her business proposal and asked her to send me a detailed business plan. She immediately perked up, thinking that she had successfully manipulated me once again into helping her. Here's where my revenge really kicked in. I knew she would send me some complete bullshit business plan that would be full of unrealistic projections and entitled assumptions. So I decided to take a more proactive approach to ensuring she faced the full consequences of her actions. I contacted her new boss anonymously and sent him screenshots of all her social media posts where she had been trash-talking their company's poverty-level paychecks, and mocking their basic clients. I also may have mentioned her habit of taking extended lunch breaks to interview at other companies while she was supposed to be working. She was fired 2 weeks later for unprofessional conduct and disloyalty to the company. Then I contacted her landlord, whose information I found through public property records, and mentioned the noise complaints I had heard about from her apartment unit. I also suggested that they might want to check for the unauthorized pet she was keeping against the terms of her lease agreement. She was given 30 days' notice to vacate the premises. The coup de grace came when I hired a private investigator to dig up more dirt on Dylan, the married man she had cheated with. It turns out that Dylan had managed to get back together with his wife by lying about the extent of his affair with Victoria and downplaying their continued contact after Miami. The PI found evidence of ongoing communication between Dylan and Victoria that I anonymously sent to his wife. Their fragile reconciliation exploded immediately, and Dylan blamed Victoria entirely for destroying his marriage, throwing her completely under the bus to try to save himself. By the time our second meeting rolled around, Victoria was absolutely desperate and at the end of her rope. She cried uncontrollably, begged pathetically, and finally admitted everything that I had suspected all along. She confessed that she had only been with me for financial security and stability. She revealed that she had been planning to divorce me after a few years of marriage and take half of everything I had worked for. Most importantly, she admitted that she had never really loved me. I had just been a convenient meal ticket while she looked for something better. She said she would do literally anything for my financial help at that point. I recorded our entire conversation without her knowledge, and when she asked me what it would take to get my support, I played the recording back for her parents when they later asked me why I wouldn't help their daughter get back on her feet. They were absolutely shocked into silence when they heard their daughter's true feelings and motivations in her own words. They finally saw Victoria for who she really was, a manipulative, calculating person who had never genuinely cared about me as a human being. It was the final piece of evidence they needed to understand why I had cut all ties with her and why I refused to provide any assistance despite her desperate circumstances. As for me, I'm in a much better place now, both literally and figuratively. My loft renovation is completely finished, and it finally feels like a true home rather than just a place where I sleep. I've hosted friends for dinner parties, had family members stay over for visits, and created entirely new memories to replace the ones that used to haunt me from my relationship with Victoria. I even installed a bar area where I display my growing whiskey collection, something that Victoria always complained would make us look like alcoholics if guests saw it in our home. I've been dating someone new for about 4 months now. Her name is Sophia, and she's a pharmaceutical rep that I met at a work conference. She knows the broad strokes of what happened with Victoria, and she's been incredibly patient with the trust issues I'm still working through. Taking things slowly has been absolutely key to making this new relationship work. She's nothing like Victoria in any way. She's more grounded, more honest, significantly smarter, and completely uninterested in status symbols or maintaining appearances for other people. It's genuinely refreshing to be with someone who values substance over superficiality. Sophia actually makes more money than I do, which was a surprise, and she insists on paying her own way for everything we do together. The first time she pulled out her credit card to pay for dinner, I almost fell out of my chair in shock. She laughed at my reaction and said, "What did you think? That I was with you for free meals?" That moment of complete honesty and financial independence was more attractive to me than any lingerie Victoria had ever worn or any manipulation tactic she had ever tried. Last I heard, Victoria had been forced to move back to her hometown and is now living in a tiny studio apartment while working as a server at a chain restaurant. She's tried to reach out to me a few times through various channels, always claiming that she's hit rock bottom and finally learned her lesson from everything that happened. But I've blocked her on every possible platform and refused to engage with any of her attempts at contact. Sometimes Victoria manages to create new social media accounts specifically to message me, and the messages always follow the same predictable pattern. They start with claims about how much she's changed and grown as a person, but they quickly devolve into desperate pleas for financial assistance. Her most recent message was particularly pathetic and desperate. "I know I hurt you, but I'm literally sleeping on my cousin's couch and can barely make rent each month. I've applied for food stamps because I can't afford groceries. Is this what you wanted, to see me suffer like this? I hope you're happy knowing that you've reduced me to this level." I didn't respond to that message, but honestly, yeah, I kind of am happy about her situation. Not because I enjoy seeing anyone struggle with basic survival, but because for once in her entire life, Victoria is facing real consequences for her actions without having someone else bail her out or enable her poor choices. Not because I enjoy seeing anyone struggle with their basic needs, but because for once in her life, she's facing actual consequences for her actions without someone else bailing her out or enabling her destructive behavior. Her parents still check in with me occasionally, and they've managed to maintain relationships with both of us from a respectful distance. They met Sophia last month and were warm and welcoming to her, though understandably a bit reserved given everything that happened. They've accepted that their daughter made her own choices and are trying to navigate the complicated situation of loving someone whose actions they can't support or condone. Victoria's dad pulled me aside during that dinner and thanked me for still being willing to stay in their lives despite everything his daughter had put me through. That conversation hit me harder than I expected it to. These are good people who genuinely cared about me and welcomed me into their family, and they're now dealing with the shame and disappointment of their daughter's betrayal almost as much as I am. The question I get asked most often, both in messages and in real life, is whether I regret how I handled the entire situation, specifically the disappearing without confrontation and then systematically orchestrating Victoria's downfall over the past year. I've had 12 full months to reflect on my actions and decisions, and my answer remains absolutely and unequivocally no. Some people might think that my revenge was too harsh, or that I went too far in dismantling her life piece by piece. But I see the situation completely differently than those critics. I didn't create fake stories about Victoria or spread lies to destroy her reputation. I simply made sure that her true character and real actions were exposed to everyone who needed to see them: her employers, her landlord, Dylan's wife, and her own parents. Victoria destroyed herself through her own actions, her own words, and her own choices. I just made sure there was nowhere for her to hide from the consequences of her behavior. She built her life on deception, manipulation, and using other people for financial gain. And when those foundations were exposed, everything naturally collapsed. Do I sometimes feel a twinge of guilt about how methodically and strategically I dismantled her life? Maybe occasionally. But then I remember how callously and cruelly she was willing to throw away 4 years of what I thought was a loving relationship for a meaningless fling with a stranger. I remember how she mocked me behind my back to her friends, calling me boring and safe while she planned her infidelity. I remember how she was planning to use me as a reliable provider while maintaining the option to cheat on the side whenever she felt like it. When I think about those things, any guilt I might feel evaporates pretty quickly. She showed me exactly who she was through her actions and her words, and I simply made sure other people could see it too. My therapist, Dr. Wilson, says that I've made remarkable progress in processing everything that happened. The betrayal no longer defines who I am or dominates my thoughts and emotions. It's simply something that happened to me, a difficult chapter in my story rather than the entire book of my life. Dr. Wilson told me recently that the best revenge is living well, but he added that there's nothing inherently wrong with helping karma along a little bit when someone has wronged you so severely. I think he secretly enjoyed hearing about Victoria's downfall during our sessions, though he maintained his professional demeanor throughout my updates. To those of you who have followed my journey from the very beginning, thank you so much for all the support, encouragement, and shared experiences. Writing these updates has been incredibly cathartic for me. It's allowed me to track my own progress and growth, acknowledge how far I've come, and release much of the anger and resentment I was carrying around like a weight on my shoulders. The comments from others who have been through similar situations of betrayal and infidelity helped me feel significantly less alone during the darkest days of this experience. Knowing that other people had survived comparable betrayals and come out stronger on the other side gave me hope when I wasn't sure I could get through it. Life isn't perfect now, and I don't want to pretend that everything is completely resolved. I still have moments of doubt and insecurity, and there are days when the past catches up with me unexpectedly. I still find myself checking Sophia's phone sometimes when she's in the shower. And then I feel sick with guilt afterward for not trusting someone who has given me no reason to doubt her. I still have dreams occasionally where I'm standing at the altar watching Victoria walk down the aisle in her wedding dress, knowing exactly what's going to happen, but feeling unable to move or speak to stop it. But these moments of anxiety and flashbacks are becoming increasingly rare as time passes, and I continue to heal. Mostly, I'm just deeply grateful for the bullet I dodged. I'm grateful for the lessons I learned about recognizing red flags and trusting my instincts. I'm grateful for the chance to build something better and more authentic with someone who actually values me as a person, rather than seeing me as a financial resource to be exploited. When I think about how close I came to legally binding myself to someone who saw me as nothing more than a wallet with a pulse, It genuinely sends shivers down my spine. The thought of being trapped in a marriage with someone who was actively planning to use me while cheating on me is terrifying in retrospect. If there's one thing I want people to take away from my entire story, it's this. Trust your gut instincts when something feels wrong. Value yourself enough to walk away from betrayal rather than making excuses for someone's inexcusable behavior. Pay attention to the small signs and red flags because they're usually pointing toward much bigger problems that you haven't discovered yet. And remember that the best revenge isn't serving it cold. It's living well while watching karma do its work naturally. So that's it. My final update on this entire situation. Life goes on, and finally, that feels like a genuinely good thing rather than something I'm just trying to convince myself of. I'm in a better place emotionally, financially, and personally than I was a year ago, and I'm optimistic about what the future holds. The story of Marcus and Victoria is officially closed, and I'm ready to focus entirely on writing the next chapter of my life with someone who actually deserves to be part of it.